go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Inspiredu Young Professional Town Hall. This is the second in our Inspiredu Town Hall series. We are very excited to be back. We had a great time last time, and so we thought we'd just keep it going. Very excited about the conversation tonight. We have an amazing panel, and we are going to get into a lot of great examples of getting your career started, all the different kinds of ways you can go. We'll do some advice, we'll get some advice, we'll take some Q&A, all that good stuff, and we're really excited. But before we go too far into that, I want to introduce the delightful CEO of Inspiredu, Richard Hicks. Richard, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good, Dana. It's good to see everyone. This is exciting to have our second town hall. This one is another really big highlight for Inspiredu, and I want to thank Dana, thank you, and thank the panelists for your time tonight. We're looking forward to learning a little more about how you can actually break into tech from education. And Inspiredu, the one thing in our mission, if you notice, is that we help underserved youth develop skills needed for education and career success. This is the journey we want to be able to have everyone feel like they're on, or they're enlightening themselves on it. Is not one of those small things in our life. All of us have a story we can tell, and we need to tell that story, and we need to answer the questions that some of you out there have sent in, so that you can learn more about how you can break into it, what kind of barriers you're facing, and how to get through it, even through this whole COVID crisis. We have a lot of learning that we can do, and that is a key component of Inspiredu, and making sure that we can bring those pieces together and you can tell your story, because it helps our mission to be even richer than it is. So with that, I'm looking forward to this discussion. Thank you all again for your time. That's the most precious thing in this world, and being able to have this time to learn more about you is definitely something that hopefully everyone, panelists, moderator, attendees, can take forward.
Thank you, Richard. A couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. You'll notice on your screen you've got a Q&A button kind of beneath where we're speaking, and you can feel free to go ahead and put some questions in there as we go through the discussion tonight. We will get to those after we sort of finish our panel conversation, and we may not get to all of the questions, but we will do our best. If we have repeats and stuff, we may sort of just combine them into one or two questions. Also, don't forget, we will have breakout rooms at the end of the Q&A, and you will have the opportunity to go directly into a breakout room with one of our delightful panelists from tonight. And also we'll have a couple of recruiters that will have their own breakout rooms as well. So without further ado, I want to introduce our panel. For those of you who have seen me moderate before, you know that I don't like to read long bios. So I'm just going to introduce everybody by sort of their name and title, and then I'm going to bring it over to them and let them tell you a little bit more about themselves. So first of all, we've got Christian Brown. He is a marketing manager at ETS Solutions, among many other things. We have John DeShazer, who many of you already know, the president of Logic Spree. We've got Gilda Doria. She is an ecosystem partner manager for Call for Code at IBM. She gets the prize for the longest title tonight. And then we have Glody Lobo, who is a test automation engineer at NCR. So welcome, panelists. Great to see you all. And as I said, I want to get you guys to talk a little bit about your background. So I'm going to go to Christian first. Can you just share a little bit about your educational background and kind of where you are in your career right now, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me, Richard. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. And so like Dana said, I'm the marketing manager at ETS Solutions. We're a faith-based technology consulting company, and I've been here for about 1.5 years. And before that, I was a student at Kennesaw State University, studying entrepreneurship, where I was able to start a few businesses, travel to some cool places, and start a podcast that I still have today. And the podcast is really the leverage that I use to get into the technology industry and meet some amazing people, mentors, friends, business partners. And that's how I got to where I am today.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. I'm going to really jump around experience levels here, because while you're all young professionals, we do have a variety of experience levels. So I'm going to go to you, John, next. Can you share a little bit about your background and journey so far?
Sure. Well, hello, everybody. My name is John DeShazer, and I'm the president of Logic Spree. Logic Spree is a Salesforce consulting firm that's based here in Atlanta. Prior to starting Logic Spree, actually, I was in the corporate space. So I was consultant for Blue Wolf, which is part of IBM. That's also in the Salesforce consulting space. Going way back to where I started off, I went to Georgia College down in Milledgeville, Georgia. And from there, I graduated, went down to Florida, worked for a little bit, came back to Georgia, moved to California, worked over there, came back here, and then just really started focusing around technology once I got back. Started off in the sales space, moved into analytics, and then into systems management, specifically into sales tools and marketing tools. Eventually, getting to the point of where I had the idea to start my own Salesforce consulting firm, which I launched about 3 years ago, and it's been going well.
So John, how long have you been in the workforce overall?
Yeah, let's see, 11 years. So
like you only get a couple more years where you get to be in the young professional group. You're like,
exactly.
Okay.
Although I'm still working on facial hair, a lot of people assume I'm a lot younger just because I'm a baby face. So
you can pass.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. And Glody, let's come to you. Can you share a little bit about your background, education, and where you are now?
Yeah, sure. My name is Glody Lobo. As Dana said, I'm a test automation engineer at NCR. Prior to that, I was in an internship program called Year Up, which is based in Greater Atlanta. And so right before that, I graduated high school. So yes, I am the youngest on the panel. I'm 19 years old. And so my journey thus far has been very, blessed, and I'm happy to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you, Glody. It's great to have you here. All right, Gilda, last but absolutely not least, can you share a little bit of your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Gilda Doria. I am an ecosystem manager for Call for Code. It's one of our humanitarian initiatives here inside of IBM. I've been at IBM for 6 years in a variety of different roles. I was in sales for a little bit, chief of staff to our CIO, so got a really inside look at what we do with our technology inside the company. Spent a little time in corporate social responsibility, and ultimately landed in my dream job just working with our clients and helping activate these social impact initiatives that we have with technology inside the company.
Did you say how many years you've been in the workforce?
Yes, I've been in the workforce 6 years now.
So we really have all levels. So I do say often that I won't ask everybody the same question, but with you all, I may do a little bit of that because you're all coming at this from such different perspectives that I think it'll be kind of fun to see how your thoughts on these different topics compare. So I want to start out with sort of, growing up. I want to go kind of way back because technology has changed a ton since you guys kind of started your schooling, in the first grade to now. PCs and became more prevalent at home. Smartphones became, everybody had to have one. It started becoming requirements for school to have some of these tools and those kinds of things. Certainly internet access, all of that. So I'd love it if you would each sort of talk a little bit about what you did or did not have access to growing up and how you feel like that impacted both, your education, but also your choice to get into technology as a career. So we'll just go backwards, and Gilda, we'll start with you.
Awesome. So this I thought it was an interesting question. I don't know how sophisticated my exposure to technology was. I think we're all, maybe some of us, kind of in a similar playing field. I definitely had appreciation for AOL dial-up and things of that nature, and Microsoft Word and PowerPoint. But I think my curiosity really, came to bear after graduate school, and I was looking at different entry-level programs and sales and development programs like Oracle, Microsoft, the IBMs of the world, and just really wanted to get my foot in the door. I think my long-term goal was always, using technology at scale to do good work in the community. But, my appetite for that came through just getting my foot in the door, exploring different technologies and what they were about, and just kind of, I would say, feeding my curiosity in that sense.
Well, arguably, you could have done some of that at any company, right? It didn't have to be a tech company. But was there something that specifically, interested in you in those companies that you just mentioned?
Yeah, I think IBM, what makes it so great, it's a company with just a lot of different industries and a lot of different business units within it. And when I say that, I mean you can come to IBM, you can be a seller, you can be a marketer, you can go into consulting. So I think when you do look at different career opportunities, it's definitely important to have that flexibility, because we all know that your first job out of college or your first job out of high school won't always be your dream job. So having the opportunity to pivot into different areas, I've probably had 4 or 5 different roles in the 6 years I've been here, is what makes bigger organizations so great. And of course, you can get that at smaller places too. But I think it just opened my eyes to a lot of different career paths. And I think it's really important as you explore options to take that into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Glody, I'm going to bring it over to you. What was your access to sort of technology growing up? And was it something you always knew you wanted to get into? Give me the background on that part for you.
Yeah, sure. So growing up, I did have the opportunity to access technology. You know, I'm not that old, but I was able to see like the flip phone, you know, playing on my dad's flip phone, to play on his BlackBerry, to now owning my own smartphone. So being able to kind of see that evolution, it really, you know, excited me. So ever since I was young, I was always curious about, you know, how things work. Why do they work this way? And I was taking things apart, putting them together just to kind of make it work myself. And so I think that's where my curiosity began. And so I always knew I wanted to be in IT. Maybe not exactly what I wanted to do, but my curiosity started from a very young age. And so, yeah, I'm glad to be here today.
You know, what's interesting about that for me is that I had access to some technology when I was younger. It was very different technology than what you guys had. But I remember being that way too. I remember playing on a computer that my dad brought home and being really intrigued with how to make it work and all the things. But you know, from my generation, certainly as a woman, and I think this is true for people of color as well. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, and certainly we're different ages, but I thought it was cool, but I never thought it could be a career. It didn't even occur to me that that was an option. So I think that's, you know, thankfully something that isn't quite the same anymore. So that's a great thing about what's happening now. But all right, I want to move that over to John now. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, where your interest in technology came from and what you had access to?
Sure. Yeah, so my experience started off in DeKalb County. I'm from Decatur originally. And my parents, they didn't attain high levels of education. My father was actually a mailman, so he knew, you know, his role, and, you know, my parents knew what they knew. But however, we were fortunate enough to have a computer in the mid-90s. And I have an older brother who's 13 years older than I am, who grew up in the 80s and early 90s, was fascinated with computers. So once we got a computer, I got exposure from him at a really young age about customizing technology. It started off by just customizing video games. So just understanding how to change things, to, you know, change outcomes, to even modifying to some of the tools with our computer. And then I became that technology expert in our household. So for my parents, helping them use new pieces of technology. And so for me, it was just learning how can I help more people in my family. It didn't occur to me to think about a career in technology, but because I got exposure at a young age, it started really coming naturally. And actually, I do have a story about the AOL days. So I remember when we received the floppy disk in the mail, and we installed AOL, and we got the notification, you've got mail. So my sister and I think I was maybe 6 or so, 5 or 6, thought literally we had mail in the mailbox. So we both run outside to go check the mail, and we don't see any mail there. But fast forward to today, I actually have an app called Informed Delivery that lets me know that I actually do have mail in my mailbox now. So it's all kind of come back a little bit.
That's pretty funny. I love that. All right, Christian, and I promise you guys I will not do every question to every person after this, but Christian, talk a little bit about, you know, what drew you to technology and what you had access to growing up.
Yeah, definitely. I always say that I believe millennials and Gen Zers, they have an advantage when it comes to technology because a lot of us grew up with it, right? Like for myself, I grew up playing video games, and I got my first cell phone in 5th grade because one day I came home from school and no one was home and the door was locked. I couldn't get in. And so I had to sit outside and I was crying. My parents came home, and after that, they gave me a phone. And with that phone, I noticed I had access. Right. So I had access to other people. I could call people, text people, and that really opened my eyes to how technology is a bridge. And fast forward to now in podcasting, it's the same, right? With the podcast, I can talk to people all around the world through the technology that we use every day. And so like John said, it all came full circle for me as well.
That's awesome. All right, I want to kind of open it up now to a little bit more of a discussion between all of us, because I want to talk a little bit about the education system. I mean, we all know about Inspiredu and the work they're doing to help bridge that digital divide and make sure that everybody has access to devices and to the learning that goes with that. And so, looking back on not only what you had, but what you saw around you and what you saw other people lacking, or even just from the standpoint of what you were learning in school as it related to technology, or what was being presented as career opportunities. Now that you are all out in the workforce for your various numbers of years, if you could kind of go back and advise the educational system, what would you say that they need to add or change or shift to encourage more people to embrace technology and to kind of go into these careers? John, you want to go first? You're nodding. And you guys all can just unmute if you want and jump in, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a little bit since I've been in education, but if I were to go back and inform people back then, I would definitely encourage more of a formation of stronger partnerships with local and regional employers to really understand some of the current and even projected future needs as far as opportunities. Because I think there's a gap in terms of understanding what opportunities are available, but then also understanding what's needed to get those opportunities, what skills or what type of experiences that you would need to pursue them. But first, you need to understand that there's opportunity there. Because like just looking back to, say, my days in college or even in high school, the careers that are available today and that are relevant, I was not aware of. And it was, part of it was lack of exposure.
Yeah. I was talking about sort of the way it was for me at my age, but I do wonder if it's changed, and you guys can tell me because you've been in school more recently than I have. But, one of the things I think back in the day that was true was that anything around technology, IT, computers was sort of taught as programming. And if you didn't like programming, then there was that was it. Well, then that's not the career for you. Like there wasn't that understanding that you can sort of go into technology as a marketer or a communicator, or a salesperson or a designer, and that there were other things to do besides just code that could still get you into this really, amazing industry. How was that for you all when you were in school? Anybody jump in?
Yeah, I'll speak here. It was similar for me when I was in college. I was interested at first in an information systems degree, but when I thought of that and when I talked to people about it, it was all about security, cybersecurity, and protection. And that stuff didn't sound cool to me, right? I didn't know about the emerging technology. I didn't know about artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, but it was all there at the time. I just didn't know. I wasn't aware.
Yeah. And what do you think, Ilda? How did you feel about that? Because you said you didn't even really realize it was something you were interested in until after grad school.
Yeah, I think the opportunities came when I was just looking at like jobs, but in college in particular, I went to a liberal arts school, so it was very different in terms of what I was majoring in, what I was getting exposed to. But to your previous question, Dana, I would say just marrying industry, the government, and education, like bringing us all together. It's a plug for IBM, but we do a lot of work within P-Tech, which is like our STEM pathway. High school students get the opportunity to, get their high school diploma, associate's degree, as well as get an internship opportunity and be the first in line to interview for internships at industry partners. Because I'm a firm believer, if you see it, you can do it. And giving students and mentees and different people just across the globe the opportunity to get that exposure, I think is really important, especially as you're developing and kind of choosing what career paths to go into.
Yeah, so it's almost like I think I hear, John, you were saying something similar. So the whole idea of getting corporations and people who are already in these fields involved earlier and sort of cross-pollinating as much as possible with kids in the educational system and teachers too, of course. Glody, you're the closest to being out of school. What would you say?
Yeah, sure. So I remember when I graduated high school, actually all throughout high school, I told myself I'm going to be a developer. I'm going to be a developer because all throughout high school, they geared us to, coding, that was a big thing. And that's all they fed to us. And we really didn't know anything else in the IT world besides coding. So once I graduated, I asked myself, do I really want to be, a software developer? Is that what I want to do? Sit for 8 hours and just write languages. And then it occurred to me, like, back to the kind of like the educational system question. I feel like, if there was more opportunities where students could actually experience, what it is to fill that role, then maybe they'll understand better what they're looking for and, what they want as a career. So definitely.
Yeah.
There's,
John, go ahead.
I was going to say there's one thing I just want to chime in on as well, and you hit on this as a little bit earlier, is shifting our mindset that everything is, say, specifically around, say, development, software development and customization. As we progress into the future, a lot of careers are just more so technology enabled. So, dealing with marketing, sales, accounting, all of these different areas involve some use of software or technology, and someone needs to either develop that technology or understand how to utilize it. So any career in the future is going to be touching technology, and that's the kind of exposure I think also needs to be upfront in the education system, getting people accustomed to leveraging technology.
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions we had on our sort of, predetermined list that we were kind of working off of together was about sort of if you're not really passionate about technology. And I think what that really meant is if you're not passionate about coding or even, the hardware, right? If you're not passionate about technology itself, but you're sort of wanting to be at a company that has really great opportunities like Gilda was talking about, or one that aligns with how your personal mission, or those kinds of things. And a lot of technology companies do those things. There is a place for you, right? I mean, that's what you're kind of getting at, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like with Christian, he works in marketing for a technology company. And it's understanding the role of technology in not only like our world and in our economy, but also in specifically what you're going to be doing day to day in your role. Just understanding that impact of technology.
Yeah, I want to jump over to you, Christian, and change gears a little bit, because I was reading your bio and you had a lot of really powerful stuff in there about sort of your sort of bigger vision in terms of what you want to see in the world and what you want to be in the world, right? And then you also have this career, and they sort of are going hand in hand. But I was just sort of curious about how you're sort of marrying those two trajectories. Maybe you could explain to everybody what I'm talking about. You mentioned the podcast already, but I know you've done some traveling and some writing. So maybe give us a little part of that part of your history and just sort of talk about those sort of paths together.
Yeah, definitely. So while I was in college, after a few rough years of not having any purpose, not having any direction, I took a year off and I was able to travel. And through traveling, my eyes opened to the wealth gap that there is in the world, not just between, in America with like Black people, but also like in Africa, right? And I was really inspired by that. I was inspired by that because I read a stat that said African Americans own less than 1% of the wealth in America, right? And that alone really just ignited a fire inside of me. And I started to question how I can help. And so I know technology is the future, right? Like everyone says. And so I knew that there was a way to get into this industry and begin to build, right? But build partnerships, like I mentioned earlier, build connections and build allies. Because no one person can change something by themselves. It takes a community and it takes a network. And so that's kind of my vision for why I'm in this industry, so I can connect with people and also learn about what I can do to help push the needle forward.
Yeah, I love that. Let's stay on this, idea of connection for a minute and talk about networking and connection, and dare I say it, COVID, because we all just came through this, over a year of sort of not networking in the traditional sense. And, for a lot of us in our careers, the ability to meet people at sort of casual networking get-togethers and, have a cocktail with somebody and, clink glasses and trade cards and all the old school stuff is how we made those connections and moved ahead. So I just am curious if you guys feel like this past year has really slowed your careers down at all, or if it really didn't have an impact. Were you able to sort of still make connections over, at events like this over Zoom? Like, just give me a little bit of sense of how you've felt about this. Gilda, we haven't heard you in a little bit, so I'll go to you on that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's definitely difficult. I think a lot of people are going through Zoom fatigue. I hate saying it, but it's true. I don't think necessarily slowing down. I think I've just been a lot more intentional with the meetings I've been scheduling. So if I am meeting with a mentor, I'm not just, casually catching up. I'm making sure I have like a set agenda. What do we want to accomplish? What are some goals that I want to get done for the quarter or for, the first half of the year? But I think it's just, with anything in life, it's just having your goals, being self-disciplined and making sure you're still making the time, even when you are tired, to still make those connections, even if it is just to catch up on certain topics that you want to cover with someone in your company. I have been doing a lot more proactively in terms of LinkedIn. If there's someone who has like an interesting career path that I'm fascinated by or want to learn more about, setting up some time with them and always reaching out for 15 minutes, but also, adding value to their conversation. If there's anything I can connect them with back inside of IBM. Everyone says it, but your network really is your net worth. So I think just being intentional and setting up the time, even when you don't really feel like doing it, is super important.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you of the group, you kind of have a little bit of an advantage maybe because you're at a bigger company and you've been at this for a little while. So I'm going to bring it over to Glody because this is like, you're the newest at all of this. And you kind of, right as you're starting, you get stuck with this year of craziness that no one could have ever anticipated. So how was it for you? And what are you looking forward to in the next year?
Yeah, sure. I wouldn't say my career slowed down, but I will say, there was a moment of getting a little comfortable, especially, you can work from your bed, just have half a suit on, you have shorts under, in a Zoom call. So you definitely, there's a little bit of, getting too comfortable. As soon as the office opened back up for us, I took that opportunity to come in and be here every day because you get a sense of more, you're more focused, you kind of remember your goals better and you go at it 100%. So it has been a crazy year, but, you just kind of have to remember, what am I here for? What am I doing? And so you keep going. Yeah,
absolutely. And I want to stick with you for a second, Glody, because one of the other questions we had on our sort of predetermined list, which I've already gone way off the rails about, but was about sort of habits that you might have formed that or wish you had maybe that have been the most helpful to you so far in your career. So is there anything in this first, couple of years for you with the internship and then now where you've really felt like this one habit, whether it's making your bed or, whatever it is there anything that you've been doing that's really been helpful to you that you think might be helpful to others?
Yeah, definitely. So we do live in a world of a lot of technology and but what I like to do, I like to write down my goals for the day or the task I have for the day. I feel like when you write it down, you have a more sense of like urgency. I have to get this done. And so writing things down has really helped me stay organized and accomplish my tasks and goals. And so that's one advice I would give. And also keeping in touch with my mentors. You're not on this journey alone. There's definitely people out there you can definitely reach out to whenever you feel overwhelmed or you feel like, you can't really make it through the day. So definitely reaching out to them. They're definitely a support team as well as family and friends. Never do it on your own, basically.
Absolutely. All right, Christian, I want to jump over to you now because you've got a lot going on, podcasting and work and all the things. So what about you? Any habits that have really like saved the day for you?
Let's see. I definitely say journaling. I'm a huge advocate for journaling, just because we have so many thoughts, especially someone like in my position who has so many different roles. There are always things going on. If I don't write down my ideas in the moment, I end up forgetting them. And so that's been huge for me, journaling, and then reaching out to people is with the open heart, open mind, and saying, "Hey, are you okay?" I think that's a question that has been kind of overlooked the past year or so. Just genuinely asking if someone is okay. I think that can go a long way.
Yeah, I think there's also just an interesting point you're making about reaching out to people, because I think especially when you're new in your career, you're afraid to do that sometimes. But you have to kind of remember that the people that are, above you on the corporate ladder are just people too. And it's nice to have somebody ask how you're doing. So
yeah, and I want to say something to that too, if I can, really quick.
Please.
Yeah, so like I'm kind of in a cool position because I do host a podcast for ECS Solutions as well called CIO Insights that releases tomorrow actually, and with that I get to talk to CIOs, and a lot of the times they say, people think we're so tough and we're so hard, but we're really soft on the inside. We have families, we have things that we go through. And so we struggle as well, right? And so I think once we break down that hierarchy level, that hierarchy scene, and just say, okay, this is a human just like I am, I think it becomes easier, and it takes a lot of the fear away from talking to someone that's higher up than you.
Definitely. All right, I want to switch gears again a little bit, but not exactly. I'm going to segue, because I think, just like that, sort of is something to think about as you're going through things. There's another, when you're younger and you're sort of looking at your career and you're thinking, well, I don't know how to do this yet, or I'm not comfortable reaching out. You have a bunch of skills that you probably don't even realize you have. And you can, I think there are ways to turn those skills into, to meet criteria for jobs. So I'm going to bring this over to Gilda. This is my really crazy segue to get to your soccer career. Because, I was talking about Christian's bio, and Gilda's bio is also phenomenal. And so we've got like a professional sports hero on this panel with us. So I just want to talk about sort of how, your background in sports sort of prepares you for your career, because I think people maybe sometimes are so focused on their sport as they're coming up in high school, even ending college, and they don't focus as much on what they want to do after the sport, but they're building a lot of skills during that time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Still play soccer to this day, or try to at least, but no, I think sports was a big part of my life, just in terms of like team camaraderie, self-discipline, work ethic, learning to interact with different personalities and trying to, get the job done and execute on it. I've definitely transitioned that into the workplace. I think, it's not a one size fits all approach when you're working with colleagues and different leadership. You're definitely need to tailor it to your style, but I think the work ethic, the attitude, I think those are the two things that one of my best friend's mom actually told me. She worked at IBM for 30 years. She said, whatever job you take, I had a great experience at IBM, but I came in with the right attitude and I worked really hard. And, networking helps too. But I think those two things are things that you can control, and it doesn't require a specific, skill set or intelligence level. It's something that you can control and take ownership of. And I've definitely done that throughout my career, and it's been successful. And it's brought me, a lot of great opportunities. But I think, it's great for interviews too. So I think it doesn't have to be sports. It can be anything. If there's a hobby that you invest a lot of time into, find ways that those skills translate into conversations when you go into your job internship or your interview for your full-time position. Because I think that people like to hire people that they know that they like and that they can work with, and showing those skills definitely translates in conversation and as people look to, down select you for a position.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, when you can share some of that, I think, first of all, to your point, and I think the point I was getting at too, is that you can answer those questions about, if you don't have I ran a team of 5 people and this is how I solved X problem, you can say, when I played soccer in college, XYZ happened and here's how I solved the problem, right? So you can still sort of showcase your skills through those hobbies or those sports or whatever it was that you were doing. But I also think you're right. When people get to know you, if you're sharing your personal story a little bit, that is a connector, and people want to hire people they know and like, and all of that. You're so right about that. Can you just tell everybody like about your soccer background a little bit, because it's cool?
Sure. I grew up through like the youth national team system, so playing Olympic development program. It's called ODP. People play other sports. Maybe basketball is AAU, and kind of like different programs that you have just in terms of development. I'm originally from Paraguay, so I did try out for the Paraguay national team. My dream was always to play in like a World Cup or Olympics. Didn't quite get there, but different opportunities opened up. I'm a huge advocate for women in tech. I think that I had an experience that didn't land me into my dream in terms of playing at the highest level in professional soccer. But I think that, pivoting into this and translating those skills into what I do now was still a win for me. I think it took me some time in terms of accepting that, but I found new interests and new hobbies within the company, similar people with similar mindsets, and different kind of business resource groups within the company to kind of give me that same type of satisfaction now. But and I also played in college at Duke, and that was a great experience as well. And now playing a little bit of semi-pro in Rhode Island. So if anyone follows the WPSL or wants to follow us on Twitter, we need all the fans we can get.
I love it. You're so modest. John, I want to bring it over to you and just talk a little bit more about the interviewing process. And, you know, as people are getting into their careers and starting to have to deal with answering some of these questions, and, you know, what's been your experience? What's like the biggest mistake you ever made in an interview? What's the best thing you ever did?
Well,
Not to put you on the spot at all.
yeah, I can say the worst thing, at least the thing that stands out, though, the greatest lesson that I had. I just came back to Georgia from California. I was interviewing for a sales role. And I went in for the interview, prepared for it, and I was only prepared to meet with one person. While I was there, though, they had me meet with 4 people, including the leader of the company, the president of the company. So by the time I reached the president of the company, most of my questions had been answered. I'd ask my questions, they answer them. So when he asked me, so do you have any questions for me? I said, no, everyone's already answered my questions. And then he just looked at me and leaned forward and said, you know, I don't know that they've answered those questions. You could just ask me the same questions. What that shows is that, you know, that you're engaged in this conversation, that you have an interest, you want to learn more. And that was his way of telling me, 1, I didn't get the job. 2, here's advice for the future. So if you're ever in this scenario again, just ask the questions. So that was probably just the biggest lesson I learned in terms of interviewing.
That's a great lesson. So here's another one. I just want to ask you about this, because since you're bringing up the questions at the end of the interview, I think everyone at any age has been through that. So do you have any questions for me? And you're always told you better have some questions, right? So like, what's the absolute wrong question to ask? Anybody can jump in if you have one. Like,
especially early in the career, how much does it pay? That's probably just, it's just taboo. Although I think it's fair to, if you're going in for a role and understanding what you're in for, what's your stake in it, but it's also just something that's just taboo. So a lot of people, you know, don't know how to kind of really approach that type of question and engaging with an employer, especially the first conversations.
so what would you say is the best thing to do to kind of wait until you get to the second conversation with them, where they're coming back, maybe making the offer, and then you can ask more about that? Is that the way to do it?
Whoever initiates the conversation, typically like if it's a recruiter, or let's say if it's hiring manager via email, just asking for, you know, a pay range. So it's not locking them down to a specific answer, but it's also room for negotiation.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I want to get some more advice for our, first of all, I just want to remind everybody watching that you can ask questions by clicking that Q&A button on your screen. We are going to get to the Q&A pretty quickly, so feel free to put those in. They can be direct questions for any of our panelists or group questions for everybody. Whatever you've got would be great. But while we're wrapping up our panel side of the discussion, I do want to get you guys to all sort of give some advice to people that are, you know, in our audience about, you know, really whatever you want, but about, you know, moving forward in their careers in technology. So I saw Christian smiling, so I'm gonna go to you, Christian. What do you think?
Yes, right. Yeah. Yep. So I promised my audience that I would give 3 secrets to thriving in the tech industry, and really industry. But these are it. And these are personality traits that I feel like will set you ahead of others. And the first one is just a willingness to learn, right? Ask questions, show up to places where you may not even provide value, but by being in certain environments, you can get opportunities. And the second one is a positive mindset. I think if you were to ask my team, what's my strongest suit, I think they would say that, a positive mindset. And that's just the optimism that something positive can always happen, you know, wherever you are. And the last one is work ethic. And if you can work hard, if you're a hard worker, that'll put you ahead in life. And so I wanted to give those 3 things. Yep.
So 2 people now have said work hard. So I guess we should work hard.
I'll say that I want to chime in with that as well. Yeah, working hard I think is extremely important. And Christian, you also hit, I think a number of you also hit on your network as far as, you know, access opportunity. So it's not only just working hard, but making sure that people are aware that you work hard and that you're good at your role. Because you can be the hardest worker in the room, but if no one knows it, the opportunity goes to the people who are, you know, were visible. So that's one thing I learned early in my career, to be okay with being uncomfortable and going into environments that normally I would have shied away from. But that was the door to opportunity and meeting people who, and in turn, open doors.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Glody, I know it's early still in your career, but talk to me about what advice you might give.
Yeah. So I get this question a lot. And the best advice I can give like someone early on in their career is to always ask questions. I remember when I was starting here at NCR, I started as an intern in my role, and I was always pushing myself like really hard to be perfect. And, that's not realistic. You can't always be perfect. But I was pushing myself to try to be perfect, no room for mistakes. So this also meant that like I tried to figure things out on my own just to prove that I could handle, anything thrown my way. But especially as an intern, they understand that you won't know everything. So it's better, to ask questions. So you're clear on the assignment, you're clear on the task, you're able to produce something with quality results. So that's the biggest advice I can give, to always ask questions and be clear on what it is you're asked to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of asking questions, I don't think we've gotten too many questions from the audience yet. So you guys take Chloe's advice and give our panel some questions. Otherwise, you're going to have to continue to listen to me asking questions for a little while longer. I do have one question from Jen. She wants to know how you guys are balancing kind of work and life. This is something we hear a lot about. We didn't get to think about that much when we were growing up. We weren't allowed. We were supposed to work. But I know people are much more looking for that work-life balance. So Jen's asking sort of how you guys are managing all of that in your careers and your lives. I don't know, Gilda, you're already unmuted, so you want to take it?
Sure. I think balance, like I said, everyone's pretty tired nowadays just being on calls all day, but I think just always making time for the things that are important to you. I think there's 24 hours in a day. I can't imagine that there's not time if you love playing sports or exercising or spending time with your family. Wake up a little earlier, even if it's 1 or 2 hours earlier, and get it done in the morning or get it done in the evening. But I also think balance is good. Like I'm very big on like big planner and just making sure I kind of run my life by the calendar. And if there are times that you want time for yourself, or even if it's for planning or kind of getting your thoughts together on what you want to accomplish or where your goals are for the week, like blocking that off. And I'm being intentional. So yeah, I think calendar, and I think, there's enough time in the day to always get things done. It's just you being proactive and making the time to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to jump off of that. Just, I don't know, whoever wants to take this, but are you guys finding it hard to sort of set boundaries with all of the, phones, and our bosses like letting you stop working and go have a life, or not so much? I mean, you are the boss, John, so I don't know.
Well, in terms of boundaries, I do believe in boundaries, and it's, set at the personal level. And I kind of want to return back to the previous question with Jen as far as balance. I think that also depends on what stage you're in, where you are in your career. Because for me, earlier stage, I ended up spending a lot more time developing the right skills, making the right connections, and growing to a point. But I had a goal in mind. But then it's also thinking of what are you ultimately working for? What's the purpose? Are you just looking to just grow and accelerate your career to have as much money as possible to have things? Or are you looking to have peace in your life? Or are you looking to have enough? So when is that point of enough? And then having those boundaries, anything that is going to cost you more as far as your time or resources for things that are not bringing you towards that kind of peace in life or what you want in life, then really evaluate what are you doing? Why are you doing it for? Why are you stressing yourself out? Or how do you change the situation a little bit to make sure that you're getting what you really want?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a question from our audience. They want to know, I don't know who asked this, but we were asked if a job in web development is a good career. So I don't know who wants to take that, but I don't know. John, you want to take that?
Sure. Web development I think it's a great career. It's usually, it's easier to get involved with web development. Especially with small organizations that have a need for web developers, because you think about most organizations have a website. Now, the skill sets are required to, say, build and manage a website, you can learn on your own. So you can learn HTML, you can learn CSS, you can learn JavaScript. And small organizations are more likely to take a risk, and it can allow you to build that experience, especially in web development, which can lead you to further your career still with small and medium-sized organizations, or even looking at large organizations once you've developed the right skill set. Because these jobs are in demand, and there's an opportunity to develop your skill sets.
Yeah. All right, we have another question, and I want to direct this one to you, Glody, because of your Europe experience. But this question says, regarding developing skills and perfecting your craft, do you have any advice on higher education because the cost is so high?
So the way I would take this question, so with me at least, you know, I'm still a full-time student, as also working here at NCR. So at the end of the day, you got to really understand, what is it I'm looking for? What direction do I want to go in? Do I want a degree? If I get a degree, what is the benefit of getting a degree? And so I can't say, you know, you have to go to college, you know. That's not something I can just put on everybody, but you just kind of have to weigh your options and see what works best for you. And kind of to go back to that web development question, you know, whatever it is you want to do, you know, you also have to enjoy what you do. So whether or not the pay is good or not, if you don't really enjoy it, you know, how long will you last there? And so that's all just things you got to think about when asking yourself these questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody else want to weigh in on that? I feel like we have seen a lot more over the last, I don't even know, maybe it's a decade now, certificate programs as an option. So some people are doing that. And, you know, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about that. I know, Christian, you mentioned just not, you know, finishing KSU not too long ago. So, I mean, do you have any thoughts about college versus certificate versus some other way to kind of get there?
Yeah, I do have some advice, but I would say to invest in personal development. One of the first investments I made once I got my full-time job was a business coach / life coach to help me and also give me accountability, right? Because I think one of the big hurdles to get over is accountability and actually not procrastinating and doing, you know, what you want to do. So that would be my advice: invest in personal development, whether that be investing in a course, like an online course, or a business coach or a life coach. There's a great website called mymentor.life that has like hundreds of coaches on there, and I use it myself. So that may be a good direction.
All right, well, we're pretty much running out of time anyway, but I did want to ask one more question that we had on our original list. Because I was reading an article about this today, but we had a question on there about sort of the skills gap. And I'm sure if you put the news on, and you hear a lot about the skills gap in America right now, and how, you know, there's tons of people unemployed, and then there's also tons of open jobs, and employers are sort of complaining that they can't find people with the skills to meet the jobs they have. And so I'm just wondering if you guys have thoughts, and Richard, you can weigh in on this too. Richard came back in to join us to help me kind of close things out. But, you know, I just wonder if anybody has thoughts about sort of, you know, what we need to do as a country to sort of close some of those, the skills gap, or if it really is true, does it really exist? Because I'll tell you from my perspective, one of the things I find is that if you've ever been somebody who's looking for a job and you hear about a skills gap, you're like, well, hold on a second, I have all the skills and they didn't hire me, so what's up? So I think there's a bunch of things going on here. There may be somewhat of a skills gap, but I also think there's an opportunity sort of misfire. I think people don't know that they have the skills to meet certain jobs, or they only need one or two other things and they might be able to take that job. Maybe corporations could do more to do training. So I have a lot of thoughts about this, but it's your panel. So, and again, I feel like Gilda, like you're making a face on this one, so I'm gonna go to you. The beauty of Zoom. I can see.
I mean, I don't have the perfect answer in terms of how we're gonna, you know, solve this complex challenge. But I think back to your earlier question of, you know, what's the best piece of advice I can give? I think the best way to get experience is by doing. So a lot of different corporations have different opportunities. I'm currently on the call for Code Team, so you can basically come in and submit an innovative idea to solve a complex challenge. And in the process, you can do a lot of skills building. So a lot of coding, a lot of development work, and you can get that hands-on experience. So I think, you know, although we can't solve it right now today, if you are looking for different skills and to, you know, beef up your resume, I think looking at different corporations, looking at research, different hackathons you can join, different certificates you can get through Coursera, and be proactive in that sense to kind of connect the dots into the missing skills gaps that you have. Because I agree. I think there's some statistic out there that by 2022, 42% of jobs are going to change. And, IBM emphasizes new collar jobs. So basically specific skill sets that you can use. You don't need a specific education, but it's really honing in on those skills and developing them. So I think any hands-on experience you can get through different corporations or different opportunities that are out there, I think will help alleviate some of those pain points.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else want to weigh in on the skills gap question before we wrap up?
I have a few thoughts on that as well. It actually goes back to earlier part of our conversation with education systems partnering with employers and tech governments as well, and really making sure that the right skills and educations that's being invested in is aligned with economic needs. Essentially, having employers really invest in their future workforce pipeline, because again, we're going to end up with gaps unless those skill sets are being developed. So there's a vested interest for organizations to work with education, develop the right skills, so they'll have the right skills and labor for the workforce. But then there's also a lot of other issues as well. One conversation I've had over the past year with other organizations is say specifically like with Black talent, for example. And it's not necessarily that Black talent isn't available. It's just that what are your recruiting tactics? What's your strategy? How are you engaging with people? Because of all places, say Atlanta, with a high proportion of Black citizens, there shouldn't necessarily be a challenge of finding Black talent. Now, in terms of developing talent, as far as again, partnering with education systems to make sure we're developing the right skill sets for these employers as well. So it's not that there's not people available. It's just are we partnering to one, develop the right skills, to find them as well, and make sure that these environments or these opportunities are available. And then I have one other thought related to this, because the skills gap or the labor gap that a lot of people are discussing right now, I think also is an economic issue in terms of pay. And it's less of there aren't people out there to work, it's just are people willing to work for, say, lower wages for complex things. So I think it's also just a discussion on what are we doing in supporting the needs of people and making sure that pay is actually, or work is worth working for.
Yeah, well, and I think too, one of the things that's going to inevitably happen if companies can't find the talent they need, it's supply and demand, right? They're going to have to work harder to do that. So they will start to do some of those programs and or hire people that have a portion of the skills they want and train them to do the rest, which is what they're going to have to do if they can't find them. So hopefully they'll start doing that sooner rather than later. All right, I don't want to have the last word necessarily of the panel. So if anybody has anything else they want to share, now's the time. And then I'm going to bring it back to Richard here in just a second. So Christian, Glody.
Yeah, I'll say one thing. Great points, John. I love that you said that. And speaking on that, me and John did a podcast episode on your Visionary podcast, episode number 38, economic development and technology. So go check that out if you want to hear more from myself and more from John. And that's all.
Marketing guy, I like it. Glody, you got anything before we close it out?
Yeah, everybody kind of touched on everything. I feel like it's kind of an effort on both sides. Like John said, is it worth working, here for whatever wage I'm being offered? But also, you also have to, be confident in yourself to actually go out and seek a position that maybe didn't think was fit for you. Trying something, you never know, you could be really good at it. So I feel like it's something on both ends that needs to kind of be figured out, work together on that.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I want to thank you guys. I wish we had a room full of people that you could hear applauding for you right now, because I'm sure they all are in their homes. John, Christian, Glody, Gilda, thank you guys so much. Richard, I'm going to bring you back. Do you have any thoughts about the panel that you want to talk about?
Yeah, seeing each of you talk about your stories and just hearing how, you've persevered and how you've given this knowledge out here. I'm going to share a little bit about, my background is in technology. It was not a nonprofit in any of these other things. And going to your discussion, Dana, about companies making the investment, where I am now is completely different than the road that, someone's on, but that don't mean that they're not talented. So to John's point is that you have to invest in people, but you also have to believe in people, believe that people will adapt. I think the world sometimes wants this perfect employee to come in there through the door, ready to hit the ground running. We all think about it from that standpoint, but what we need to do is give people a chance. Nothing beats them trying. They want to try. And I love the quote from Maya Angelou, nothing beats a try. Give them the opportunity to try, to learn and adapt, because you would be surprised what a person can do when they're challenged or when they're through the door. It doesn't have to sit out there in space, all these jobs. They can actually look at some of the folks that are here and give them the chance to see whether they can do it or not. Even if their resume doesn't scream towards it, there's an opportunity for you to actually allow someone to develop. We're always developing our minds, and each and every one of you are extremely successful, but you didn't start out like that. You started out, trying to figure out 2 + 2, and then you finally worked your way up the ladder. And I think somewhere along the line, we've got to get that sort of fire back where we can allow people to continue to work up the ladder and be able to find that sort of extra development that takes them on to their next journey. And we as a society have to do that. I think we as a human race need to do that. It's not something that needs to stop when we're trying to grow our community. And some of the things, when we stop growing, you start seeing failures, or not failures, but you start seeing setbacks. Things like graduation rates and things like those sort of domino effects. All of this forms a simian circle. These things are not anomalies. These are things where you have to make the investment in order to see things be successful. So with that, I'm going to get off my soapbox because I can continue going to the wee hours of the night with this. So I know you all want to have dinner at some point, but I really appreciate your time tonight and being able to put this whole thing together. This is something that Inspiredu is going to do moving forward. We're not going to stop connecting these dots. Whether it's young professionals, seasoned professionals, and we're gonna continue to have this discussion, because we can actually encourage some of this stuff to start turning the corner. We can encourage some of these companies to say, hey, these folks are having a panel on, taking a chance, investing in folks, and we can turn that sort of narrative from being so skeptical to being, hey, we're now filling these jobs with the people that can actually grow them. So thank y'all so much. And with that, I think I'll turn it back over to you, Dana. We have some breakout rooms. And
yes, thank you again to our panelists, and I want to thank you, Richard, for chiming in. We appreciate your everything you do for Inspiredu. I'm going to take a page out of Christian's book and do some marketing for Inspiredu right now, and just say, great way to connect with the community and with CIOs and with all kinds of other great people is to be a part of Inspiredu. There's great programming all year round. You can get back into the schools eventually and meet the kids and really see what you're doing with the organizations, having a real impact. So again, thank you, Richard. Thank you, panelists. You have an opportunity now as our audience to go meet with any one of the panelists individually in our breakout rooms, as well as a handful of wonderful recruiters that we've got for you. So if you just go to your navigation on your screen and go to the Skyview Lounge, you will see all the breakout rooms that are available. And I want to thank you again, and I hope you enjoy the breakout rooms. Thanks, everybody.